Good afternoon and welcome to our live hangout. My name is Jimmy Lanley and I work with Bright Ideas Press. We are so glad to have you with us today as we discuss homeschooling multiple ages at the same time or consecutively. We have a panel of homeschool moms, and we have Tyler Hogan from Bright Ideas Press, a homeschool dad. And these experienced homeschool parents are going to share their wisdom and their tips and their hard-won information based on real life experience with you out there so that you can do a better job of homeschooling your 2, 3, 4, or maybe even more children. I'm going to start by letting the panelists introduce themselves, starting first with Tyler Hogan. Tyler, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Tyler Hogan, and I'm a homeschool graduate. And my wife, who is also a homeschool graduate, and I have 4 kids. Our oldest is 5, and we've got a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one due in about a week. So those are our 4 ages that we have. My older brother and I were 5 years apart from each other, so my parents had to figure out a lot of these things of homeschooling 2 very different age groups at the same time. So I think this is going to be a fun topic.
Great. So we're going to hear from your perspective as a student and as a parent now. That's great. Susan, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Susan Evans from susanevans.org. I'm all about hands-on learning, unit studies, that kind of thing. I've been using Bright Ideas Press for several years now and absolutely love it because it lends itself really well to unit studies and hands-on, which is what I'm all about.
Thank you. LaToya, go ahead and tell us where we can find you online, LaToya, okay?
All right, so I'm LaToya, and I blog at LaToyaEdwards.net, and I blog about finding joy in motherhood and homeschooling and single parenting. And I have 2 boys. They're 8.5 and 6, so I am just starting the homeschooling 2 at a time in the last year or so.
Okay, we're so glad to have you with us today, LaToya. Heather? Heather is outside showing us the splendor of the autumn season, so we appreciate her very much. Heather?
I'm Heather Woodie. I blog at blogshewrote.org. I have 4 children who are in 11th grade, 9th grade, 7th grade, and 4th grade. So we have a lot of ages in middle and high school and elementary school.
And where can we find you, Heather?
blogshewrote.org.
Right. And Susan, did you mention your website? I want to make sure you have a chance to say that.
Yes, susanevans.org is where I blog.
Great. And guys, we can find Tyler at tylerhogan.com. Is that right, Tyler? And of course, he is a major force at Bright Ideas Press, and you can find him there. You can find the store, and there's also a blog there. So we encourage you to check out brightideaspress.com. Please circle Bright Ideas Press on Google Plus and follow us on YouTube so you will not miss any of our hangouts. We do these monthly, and you can find our schedule at brightideaspress.com/hangouts. We're going to jump into our discussion, and we're going to start off with talking about what subjects do you teach together? Are there some subjects that work better for teaching kids of different ages together, or are there some that really don't work for teaching kids together? Tyler, what's your experience for subjects?
Well, when I was growing up, like I said, my brother is 5 years older than I am, and my mom tried to do as much as we could together. It just keeps things so much simpler when you can do more things together. So we would always do history together, and we would do geography together. As much as we could, we would do literature together when we could do, family read-aloud kinds of things. Sometimes you can't do that, depending on the material that's in your literature book if you've got something that's just not thematically or age appropriate for younger ones, but a lot of times they can pick stuff up by osmosis. When we were in elementary and middle school, we would do science together, especially the hands-on experiments. And we also did writing together, which is, I thought, kind of interesting. I find a lot of people don't do writing together, but we had a system called Writer's Workshop. It was a big co-op group, and every week we would have just a short little mini lesson, no more than 10, 15 minutes long, and then all of the students, and we would have, from like 3-year-olds up through high school, all in the same group, and they would all read whatever they had composed the past week. Usually it was either a short story or a poem, or some of the older ones had long form stories, and we would all listen to what the other person had wrote, and if we had questions or comments or critiques, we could offer them up. But that was a great experience, and I thought that was a pretty unique thing to be able to do writing together.
Yeah,
everybody was at a different level.
I didn't expect you to say writing. That's not the typical answer. So it's showing me that maybe we can break out of what we think we can teach together. Maybe there are a lot of more things we could teach together than we would typically expect.
The one thing that we never did together was math.
Okay.
But that
and
was
why
really
is that?
About it. Well, just because math really requires you to have built some skills and understood some concepts before you can move on. So when you've got a 5-year age gap, the younger one is not going to have what it takes to keep up with the older one for the most part.
Okay, great. Susan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what subjects you can teach together, or you do teach together. Just list those out for us.
History, science, literature, any topic that is not math or learning how to read or learning how to form your letters in order to write. Those basics have to be taught separately. But I love the fact that Tyler, this is the first time I've heard anyone else besides me say that writing can be done with multiple ages, because, for example, we did a homemade field guide for a botany assignment one time. And I had a kid that was really, really tiny, like 3 or 4 years old, and all he could do is write what that plant was. And so we cut out pictures and put them each on a different page, and then he would write down just the name of the plant. And then there was another kid that was maybe 6 years old who wrote a sentence about that plant, and then somebody that was 8 that wrote a big nice paragraph describing the plant using botany language. Okay, so each one had their own writing assignment based on their experience, and I do that even now. We've been writing about the Civil War. We're using All American History by Bright Ideas Press, Volume 2. We're loving it, and the writing assignments that I'm giving to them, my daughter who's 9 and my son who's 14, the way that they write is totally different. What I expect from them is totally different. The organization and depth of what I expect from my 14-year-old is different than my daughter who is 9. So yes, you could definitely teach writing in multiple ages.
Okay, that's really encouraging. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. LaToya and Heather, I'd like to hear from both of you. LaToya, we'll start with you. What subjects do you teach together?
I'm similar to Susan. What I don't teach together is math, and then reading and spelling. Everything else we do together. Foreign language, literature, poetry, nature, science, history, geography, Bible. We do all of those things together, and I think my boys are only 2.5 years apart, so having them that close in age has been really helpful to teach many things together. And then, I know we're going to talk about this later, but having curriculum that works for multi-age has also been a big help for that. So just the things that they need one-on-one time with mom for. So, learning the math facts, or learning to multiply, or, learning to sound words out and learning to spell. Those are things that require, time with mom that they can't do all on their own. We do some math, part with mom, part on their own, but those are the 2 areas where I keep the boys separate because they're not on the same level, so I can't actually teach that together yet. My little one might catch up to his big brother soon, though, for math. He's kind of a math whiz, so that might change, but everything else we do together. Even if it looks kind of tricky, I just figure out a way to make it work.
Okay, great. Heather, you've got 4 kids, quite an age span. Tell us about this. What subjects do you teach together?
Well, this year we're teaching earth science together. I have my boys working through a curriculum where it really lends itself to earth science, and my 2 high schoolers are working through an open source textbook on earth science. And so we come together for part of that. Read aloud time is another time that we will be together. A lot of discussion and geography. So we're using North Star Geography this year, and I have my high schoolers doing it for the credit, and I have my younger kids doing some along the way. So that's kind of what we're up to. But I am one who has done math altogether. If
How did that work? I'm so curious.
Well, so we used Math on the Level, which is a program that allows you to do a lot of family math. And so usually it was when my high schoolers, my 11th grader was more like middle school when we were still doing it all together. And about 2 or 3 times a week, I would teach a new concept to the kids, each on their own level, whether it was geometry or some other higher level. It would go, we'd have to work with the older kids on where they were, and the younger kids could work on something really simple related to that concept. And we would do a thing together, and then they would have other days of the week where they would practice on their own at their own level. So I tried doing it with one-on-one time with 4 different kids at 4 different math levels, and that was kind of ugly for a while. So we decided, there are some things we can do together and some things we can't. So that's kind of how it worked.
And I just wonder if doing the things together is also a part of that family bonding, and the developing the sibling relationships. That's got to be a real perk to this, besides just time management and being efficient. So I don't know, because I'm a mom to 1, so I don't really know, but I would assume that that's a huge perk to this. So let's jump in and talk about curriculum. LaToya, I'm going to start with you because you already, kind of mentioned that. So tell us, how do you choose curriculum to use with multiple grades? Is there something you're looking for? Do you have specific recommendations?
Right. So when I'm looking for curriculum, I'm really looking for, one, is it something that I can use with both of my boys right now, or something that they will both use at some point in the future. So that's usually my #1 thing when I'm looking for curriculum. And then I'm always also looking for, is it a Christian worldview? And then I'm looking at price. And so we are very Charlotte Mason based, so I don't buy a ton of curriculum, but we do love, we're doing Mystery of History this year, which we are loving, and we're doing Earth Science from Bright Ideas Press. So that's what I really like about the curriculum here, is because I can buy it once, and I'm using it with both my boys now, and for the history, I don't have to buy it again. It's going to work for us now. It's going to work when my oldest gets to high school. We'll really get our mileage out of it. And so I really look for that. And then if it's a subject like nature or literature or things like that, I look for just living books that will work for, both my boys. So we're reading Paddle to the Sea right now as we're working on geography skills. And so we read a page or two, maybe do a notebooking page, go over north, south, east and west, just different skills, things that we can talk about that doesn't actually require a curriculum. And so I'm always looking for good books, for that. And then for me, even for things like reading and spelling, and math, I'm always looking for, is this something that I can buy once and use again? We use a math curriculum that I can't use to teach both my boys at the same time, but I use the exact same materials to teach both my boys. So whatever my oldest is using now, I can save that, for when his brother catches up to that level. And the same thing for the reading and for the spelling. So that helps me kind of keep costs down, and, it frees up money as you go along, as you have to buy less to do fun things. Like I think this year I had a little bit of extra money in the budget, so we got a museum pass to do some of those fun field trips and things to go with our learning.
Well, you bring up a good point, LaToya, that there are lots of materials out there that are great for homeschool that really are ungraded materials. They're just great books, great resources, and grade labels are very arbitrary anyway. Who determines what you study during 4th grade and what you study during 7th grade? I mean, there can be a lot of overlap there, so it's a great point. And Tyler, I see you rolling your eyes. What have you got to say there?
Well, I think that those arbitrary labels are really important to understand as arbitrary. You have to understand where your kid is at, and that's way more important than what grade they're in. It was always the joke in our co-ops. You ask a homeschooler what grade he's in, and he'll always reply with, "Well, what subject? I'm in this grade in English, and that grade in science, and that grade in math, and this another grade, and subject X, Y, or Z." So it's really just a matter of finding things that are going to be appropriate for your kids' skill levels. And that's something that we always try to be sensitive to when we're writing curriculum here is, in the Mystery of History, we'll give you a an age range. These are younger student activities, these are middle student activities, these are older student activities, and we'll give you some suggestions on what those could mean, but it's up to you to know your kids, and that's what that's what homeschooling is all about.
Excellent point. I love that. Heather, how about choosing curriculum for kids together? Do you have any thoughts on that, or how you teach kids at the same time? You just jump in there with any of your tips.
Well, I think it does depend on where your kids are on the age bracket. So we're kind of a unit study family. We studied 5 in a row forever and ever. That's really the foundation of our homeschool. And so when my older kids outgrew that after middle school, we had to look for something different. And usually I try to find something that's more resource-based than exactly curriculum-based. But now that I have 2 kids in high school, it's easy to work those together. And so we're doing American history together, and like I said before, earth science and geography. Actually, what started out as being super together is kind of fallen apart a little bit because my 16-year-old has Lyme disease, and so he's unable to keep up with my daughter, and so I have to let her keep going. So my perfect plan is sort of shattering before me, but it's always good to keep that in mind, that you have to be flexible no matter what you choose, and sometimes what works for one kid is not going to work for another. And at our homeschool, we try not to buy lots of things and just keep buying and replacing. We try to make it work for a while before we have to make a new investment.
That's really smart. Thank you, Heather, for sharing that. We have a question from Kyle. Suzanne, she asks about Writer's Workshop. Is that a curriculum or just something one of the moms put together? So Tyler, I'm going to let you answer that. I'm looking for it right now, but you go ahead and answer it.
Well, it is on our website at brightIdeasPress.com. It was just something that we started doing when I think I was probably in kindergarten at the time when we started doing it together. And it was really loose, and it was just something that moms would take turns putting together. But a few years ago, my mom and my brother got together and just put together a little lesson guide for it. So you can get it. I think it's like $14.95, and it's like a year's worth of co-op lessons and instructions on how to do a writer's workshop and suggestions on how to handle readings and different grade levels and stuff like that. So yeah, it is on the website, and it is something that a bunch of moms just put together.
But it is an actual product that you can
It is an actual product that you can get now.
It's a digital download, and I just put the link on the event page. It is a little bit tricky to find on the site. It's in the other products, but again, there is a link, and Kyle, you should be able to find that. So thanks for asking that great question. So how do you, let's talk about, you've got different kids, different grade levels, different maybe learning styles, maybe some different special needs, different personalities and different passions. Every person is different, and that's one of the great things about homeschooling, is being able to cater to our children's individual needs and desires. How can you do that when you're teaching everyone together? Now, Susan, you already touched on this a bit when you said expectations are different, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you do that, because we don't want to just think about a traditional classroom setting where the teacher is up there and all the kids are doing exactly the same thing. That's not what you guys mean when you say teach together. So, Susan, will you elaborate a little bit more on how you're teaching together, but yet you're allowing for individual differences? And then, Heather, I want you to focus on this and talk about passions.
Yes, I love teaching my kids together because, like you mentioned, the togetherness of the family, the unity, the relationships that are built, we have all those things in common when we have the same knowledge base that we have been building together. And so when we're off on a hike or something, if we've learned about rocks and minerals, then we can recognize those things. We have an interest in those things because we've learned together. I mean, the same thing with any work of literature. Like we, in the summer, we did Uncle Tom's Cabin. That is a high school level book. However, whenever I read it to the kids, I would define any words that were difficult, and we would stop and we would talk about it. And we had really good discussions. I mean, this was just phenomenal discussions about, what slavery was, how people perceived people of different colors and of skin, and and my kids were outraged. It was wonderful. I said, outrage is appropriate, you know. And so we were discussing these things. I love doing things with the whole family because of this. Okay, so so yes, you can use curriculum that you pull together yourself, or it helps to have like a backbone. Okay, like Bright Ideas Press has a lot of books in history and in science that that work as a backbone for unit studies, which that's why it works so well with unit study people. But yeah, so we love the unity, the depth of conversation, and kids that are younger then have deeper thought about something because of the things introduced by their siblings that are older, you know. So it's just better all around. Jimmy, you're muted.
Thank you. So I'll say that again. Heather, tell us about how you stimulate your kids' passions while you teach them together.
Well, we do that through collaboration. Sorry for the interruption before. I so thought I was muted. So we do a lot of collaborating in our homeschool, and that means that we'll be working on different things, and my kids still work together. And actually, that takes a whole lot of work to get them to where they can make positive feedback and be able to help each other solve problems when they come up on what they're working on. So they might ask for feedback on a character for something they're writing, or they might say, you know, hey, help me to solve this problem. I'm not sure how to do this. And it's more than just having older kids help younger kids. It's also my younger kids giving feedback to my older kids. And so I have one that has a real strong personality, and sometimes he can come across as being harsh even when he doesn't mean to. So that takes a whole lot of work. But if you can get that to work, it's gold, because it goes such a long way, and it's a really authentic way for them to work together. So in our homeschool these days, you don't find us sitting around a table like they were when they were young, and you don't find us all out together all the time, but you do find my kids paired off all the time and working together throughout the day. And that's actually one of the things I love to see, because it's so meaningful to them.
And you know, they say teaching is learning twice, so I'm sure it's of benefit to both parties that are doing that, right, Heather?
Yes, it really is.
Okay, good. So that was going to be one of my next questions, was about children collaborating together. Does anyone else, Tyler or LaToya, have any thoughts about children collaborating together during the day?
Well, my brother and I didn't particularly collaborate with each other, but we did have a lot of the same interests. JB and I, in a lot of ways, were two sides of the same coin, or night and day of the same 24-hour period. We were as different as could be, but in so many ways we were alike. So, for instance, we both really loved music, and we loved learning about music. But JB wanted to play drums and bass guitar, and I wanted to learn clarinet. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of collaboration that happened there, but one thing that my parents did do is we had the same teacher. So as a way to save time and get a bulk discount, I guess, we both had the same music teacher. You know, he was a band teacher, so he knew all of the instruments that we wanted to play and could instruct both of us. And even though I don't think we've ever done anything musical together, that was something that helped Mom, you know, help us to explore our musical interests, even though it wasn't strictly a collaboration.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's talk about what you do with these multiple ages when you're not teaching them together. So obviously we talked about math and reading and spelling and maybe some other areas where you might teach children separately. So how do you manage that? How do you deal with, you know, you're teaching one and then you've got these other kids over here, and maybe some of them are babies or toddlers. How do you keep your household together while you're doing that? Who has some wisdom here?
I can share. In and this is something that I just started doing this year for my oldest son, who I think would be in 3rd grade. That's what 8-year-olds are in. I don't keep track of grades either, Tyler. But what I've started doing for him to encourage him to do more independent work is I start with his, with my little one when we start our school day, and I will give my oldest things to work on his own. So he might take whatever book he's reading for free reading, and he might go get in his bed and read for a while I'm working with his little brother. Or sometimes we will have done maybe a nature walk, and he's really found something he wants to learn more about, and he will take that time to go and read some books, or look on the computer or something to find out more information about whatever that topic was. I think a couple months ago he was into copperhead snakes, to my horror, because there were snake books everywhere and I'm terrified. But he spent most of his time, when I was working with his brother, he spent reading about copperheads, and he became the expert in the family, and he was able to kind of share with us everything that he was learning. It was really great, except when he decided we needed to move to Antarctica, because that was the only place where there were no copperheads. And so that's what my oldest does. I kind of have given him independent work to do. So, I'm going to work with your brother. Why don't you go work on your copywork assignment or read or something like that? And sometimes, depending on the day, I just send him outside. I'm like, just go outside and play and run around to get some of that energy out before, he needs to sit down and focus on math or spelling or whatever with me. And then for my younger child, I kind of have to guide him a little more, because being child number 2, he's used to having that playmate all the time. And so I might have certain activities that I only pull out when I'm doing schoolwork with his brother. So there's puzzles that only come out during school time, or there's just little projects he can work on, a craft project he can do on his own, or Play-Doh. My boys love Play-Doh. Or I might just say, hey, you wanted to work on that Lincoln log building this morning. Now you've got the whole room to yourself. Why don't you go work on that while mommy's working with your brother? And so far, that works. It gives them some time apart from each other to kind of, like you were saying, chase after what they're passionate about. And usually at some point during the day, we all end up in the same spot anyway, because one of them will be lonely and they'll come sit at the table quietly. But having them have their own little tasks to do is really, really been helpful to kind of keep the chaos to a minimum. And then also for me, our day is scheduled so that we only have the first part of our day is where I'm working with the kids independently, and then after that we're spending most of our day together as a family, so they kind of have an end in sight. They know, well, mommy's just got to do this and this with brother, and then we can all be together, doing a project, running errands at the park or whatever. And that kind of helps, since they're so young, they just want to go. It helps them to know, well, just for these few minutes, and then we'll move on to something else.
Okay, that's a helpful way of dividing up your day. I'm sure that will help a lot of moms. Susan, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, when my kids were babies and toddlers, I wanted to include them in our day because I have 4 kids. The older ones were ready for school, obviously, before the younger ones. So what I would do is I would give those babies or toddlers something open-ended, like LaToya was saying, that they could do to keep their hands busy so that they weren't making noise to interrupt my teaching time with the family. I did a free webinar, and it's called A Routine for Young Children. If you have the bulk of your kids are young, that is a half-hour webinar that shows you how to schedule or have a routine for your day so that kids that are babies and toddlers and preschoolers are not just screaming or pulling on you and draining you, so that you can actually teach your older kids. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is that when I was teaching my kids to read, or in my case, I was teaching them to read on a higher level, and I wanted them to read to me every day. So I am only one human. So that time had to be scheduled that one of the kids was reading to me, and during that time, I wanted the other kids to not be screaming or running around or whatever. And so I would have them do their math or something like that. The other thing is like a computer. If you only have one computer and you have several people doing math on the computer, for example, they need to take turns. And so how do you do that? You need to have a routine. Either you could get your work done and then you put it into the computer, and then the first one that's ready can do it. That's how I do it, because we have two computers, and all four of my kids are doing math with a computer-based disk, thing. So that's what we do for math. But then, like writing assignments, for example, my older kids especially will type out their writing assignments, and we only have a limited amount of computers. And so when they're doing the writing assignment, I'm having a younger kid read to me or something like that. So and it doesn't have to all be like a rigid schedule. It could be just a flow to your day with what you do in what order, and then you just see if somebody's finished with their math, they have other things that they need to do, and if you are free right at that moment, you can have them read to you or whatever. So it doesn't have to be so regimented as far as scheduling, but you do get more done if you have some sort of routine or schedule to your day. But those are the things you have to keep in mind, is the skills, what you have, like computers or that is necessary one-on-one, so that you can homeschool multiple ages for separate things that are needed, especially the skill areas.
Okay, I hadn't thought about the actual, hardware or objects that you might need to share. That's a really good point, thinking about managing those, Susan. Thanks for your wisdom there. Tyler, I know you had some things to share on this one.
A couple of thoughts. One thing that my parents did is they took advantage of a lot of good tutors and co-ops and other people who were just in our circles. And so we frequently had other people teaching us various subjects, whether that was one-on-one or in a group. And when we would have those people come in, that was usually a great opportunity for mom to snag the other one to do some other subject. So, if my older brother's in co-op, then, mom has a couple of uninterrupted hours with me to work on whatever it is we need to work on. So if you have those kinds of co-ops and you're not putting all of your kids in that co-op, those can be really useful opportunities that you can maximize. Another thing that we did is, because my parents have a very different set of skills and things that they're comfortable teaching, sometimes, especially when we were older, Dad would take us and do math, and that was just something that he would do with us one-on-one when he was home. And now that I have a first grader, that's something that I do with her. Helen does just fine teaching Kaylee math, but it's something that's special for Kaylee and I to do together now. And it's something that, when you have both parents in the house at the same time, and I can take Kaylee, down in the basement to do math, and that's fun for her because it's special time with Daddy. Even if it's math, she's young enough, she doesn't have the mindset to realize that, oh, this is work, I should be complaining about this. No, it's still fun. And that gives Helen a chance to do something with the other two, read them some books or work on a project or play with them or do puzzles or what have you. So having both parents teaching, if you can work that out and if there's time, that can be incredibly handy.
That's a great tip, and I know Heather does that too, because I've seen photos on Instagram of her engineer husband teaching their daughter chemistry formulas on, it looks like they have a huge chalkboard over their couch. I don't know if that's in your living room or where, but tell us about that, Heather.
Yeah, we have a retired chalkboard from our local university, and so it is like 4 foot by 5 foot, the most exquisite piece of slate ever. And so everybody wants a chalkboard explanation. I think this needs a chalkboard explanation. So the thing is the love seat is right underneath of it, and I leave it there because I can't reach the top without it anyway. But my husband's like 6 feet tall, and he recently was standing there towering over explaining stoichiometry. So it's a real treat for him to explain things.
I love those pictures, and the fact that she was asking for chemistry explanations kind of on off time, and like Tyler was saying, little kids don't realize that math isn't fun yet, and maybe she'll never realize that. Maybe she'll always love it, and that's great. But that's a great point, Tyler, about getting other parents or grandparents involved or whatever to multiply your forces and manage your time. So let's talk a little bit about co-ops, because Tyler, you brought that up, and tell us how to manage multiple teaching in a co-op.
Well, that is very dependent on the subject and on the group dynamics of the co-op and who's teaching and how involved the parents are. I mean, co-ops, they're a whole topic in and of themselves, so we can't get into all the dynamics of that. Most of the co-ops that I was a part of growing up were pretty well age segmented. So, we had a 6th and 7th grade co-op or a high school co-op. So you don't usually have more than 3 or 4 grades together, and that makes it easy enough because, like we said, we're focusing on what are the kids' skills and abilities rather than what grade level are they in per se. In the co-ops that I teach, in all of my spare time, I usually ask for ages 12 and up. I can handle. I love that age group. That's my teenagers are my favorite to work with when I'm teaching stuff because you can go deep with them, and I think they're fun. Not everybody enjoys teaching teenagers, but some people do. So I'm willing to work with any 12 and up who wants to come in my co-op, and having those different expectations for them makes a big difference. So when I was teaching North Star Geography, when we were doing our trial runs, we had a couple of 8th graders in the co-op, and we had some 12th graders in the co-op and everything in between. And those younger students, they had the exact same material presented to them, and they grasped it, for the most part at the same level as the 12th graders were, but my expectations for their homework were definitely different. And I was in more communication with their parents about their homework, and helping them to sort out, okay, this girl, she can skip this assignment, or if you just do this much, that's perfectly fine. Because she wasn't trying to get high school credit out of it. So, it didn't matter if she was reaching, X level of proficiency necessarily. It was more about exposure and practice and learning some of these core concepts. So having a teacher in a co-op who's willing to work with different age levels and figure out and communicate well with the parents what the expectations are, that's really important.
Okay, thanks for that. We have a few things from the audience I wanted to bring in. Kyle left a comment that says, we also have the children work together in several different subjects, and I found it not only helps them better understand the lesson, it also strengthens our family relationship. And we did touch on that, and Kyle, we definitely agree with you on that. And Mahogany Homemaker says, I agree with Heather about making a curriculum work rather than just dishing out funds for a brand new one. There is a lot you can do to tweak things till it fits. Yes, and I call that shopping the shelves. I just go and I shop my own shelves and see what I have that might fit and that I can somehow use. So that is very smart, and we're all about being very frugal around here. We are going to be wrapping up our hangout really soon. I'm going to give everyone one last chance to share their thoughts about homeschooling multiple ages, why do it, how do it, if there's any other tips that they didn't get out. But before we do, I want to encourage everyone to visit brightideaspress.com. There's a store there, and there's also a blog with lots of free content. We hope that you'll circle us on Google Plus and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Reach out to us. We have a really vibrant Facebook community as well. If you're a Facebook person, you'll want to look up Bright Ideas Press on Facebook as well. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're really everywhere. But we would love for you to subscribe to our newsletter so you'll get updates about coupons and specials that we're running. So I'm going to open up for kind of last words. Heather, give us your last bit of wisdom there on homeschooling multiple ages.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that when you have multiple ages, something's going to go wrong. And so I just encourage you to remember that somebody's going to be having a bad day, or whenever, it would never fail that when I would sit down to read aloud, the baby would poop. So there's always an interruption. There's always something that it happens, and you just have to be flexible and roll with it. Because if the person who's moody needs to just take a time out for a little while, then everybody else has to roll on. That's okay. You don't have to stop everything you're doing. You don't have to, you just have to pick up where you left off and not worry about the time that was lost. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy.
Fantastic advice. I know that is from personal experience. Thank you, Heather. LaToya.
So I would just say when you're teaching more than one is to remember the importance of grace in your homeschool, grace for mom or dad, whoever's teaching, grace for your children. It will take a while to find the things that work best for your family, and right about the time that you figure it out, it will change. So I always like to encourage people to have a plan and write that plan in pencil so that you can erase when you need to. And then I would also just keep expectations realistic for yourself and for your children. I have perfectionistic tendencies myself, and my children have the same thing. So sometimes if we're working on a project together, a notebooking page for a history lesson that we did, my little guy will look at Big Brother's thing and complain, oh, well, mine's terrible because it's not like my brother's. And I have to say, well, honey, you're 6 and he's 8. And he has more experience reading, he's got more experience writing, and you just do the best, that you can do. I don't require my 6-year-old to write a paragraph on his notebooking pages. Do your best picture, and then you tell mommy what you want, and I'll write it for you, because that's where you are. And I think it's important to keep that in mind and to help your kids understand that too as you're working together, so they're not kind of, putting themselves down because they don't match up with brother or sister or whoever else is there.
That's a great point about comparison when you've got multiple ages together. That's a really good point. And I'm sure when you do homeschool multiple ages together, kids will see that while this brother might be better in this area, this sister might be better in another area, and it might not even depend on age or grade level. It's just personal skill level, personal abilities. So Tyler, we're going to give you the last words here. Homeschooling multiple ages.
Take advantage of nap times if you've got little ones. That's probably the most crucial element of our day right now, is just making sure that everyone who needs a nap gets one. And that might be the baby, that might be the toddler, that might be the preschooler, that might be the kindergartner, that might be mom. But if anybody needs a nap, they get one. And that just solves more problems than anything else. And if mom doesn't happen to be the one needing a nap that day, that's a nap time for everyone else is a great opportunity for the one child who's doing just fine and can stay up. Sometimes that special one-on-one time that happens when all the other siblings are down is really priceless.
That's a fantastic point. And as someone who took a nap yesterday and felt so much better afterwards, I will say I love that comment, Tyler. Yes. So fantastic information. Those of you that are watching live or listening or watching the YouTube video recorded, if you have any questions or comments for these people, tag them. If you'll put a plus and their name, you can tag them and they'll get a notification of your comment or question. If you don't tag them, we'll still know about it, but the individual might not see it. But we'd love to hear your comments, your feedback, your questions. We can continue the dialogue on Google Plus and on YouTube. So we really appreciate your spending this time with us. And again, we want to encourage you to check out brightideaspress.com, where there are lots of great Christian curriculum options for your homeschool. So thank you all. Next month we will have another hangout, so stay tuned. You can find that schedule at brightideaspress.com/hangouts. And until then, we'll see you. Have a great fall. Bye, everybody.